There we go. Sorry, just making sure that everything is technically coming together in the right way. And I think we are, the 10th edition of the World Innovation Summit for Education has begun here in Doha, in Qatar. Of course, it's taken place in person, but also lots to do online through a dedicated digital platform. And over the next few days, we will be hearing from education leaders, policymakers, innovators, and practitioners. We just opened with a beautiful opening session. Wendy Kopp um, um, is the Wise Prize laureate 2021 for Teach for All. And we've had a great panel coming, opening the discussion, making us think really about how we can unmute the next generation so we can really make sure that education is theirs. And I'm very fortunate here to be with Andrew Ashe. Andrew Ashe is the founder of 1billion. And that is an amazing organization. And I'm very happy right after the opening session to be sitting down here with Andrew to talk about WISE, but also to talk a little bit about 1billion. Andrew, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. It's a joy to be with you.
Really great to have you. And let's first start with your thoughts on Wendy Kopp becoming the Wise Prize laureate.
Well, I think it was just wonderful to see Wendy up on the stage and talking about Teach First. I mean, I think she's an inspiration to all of us with her vision and drive and all that she has accomplished in so many countries. So it was such a wonderful thing to see her receiving the award.
Yeah, it's definitely well deserved. One thing that stuck with me is whereby she said, like, it's a long game. And I 100% agree with her, also trying to make a difference in education. Would you agree?
Yes, I think the theme of this conference is unmuting those voices that aren't heard. And it is a long game, and we've got to listen to the voices of children. I mean, 1billion that I work with, 1billion work with the 70% of children defined by the World Bank as not able to read at age 10. This is a crisis in the world, and we've all got to be innovative and looking forward to what the future looks like for education. And I suppose the message I would say that's come out so strongly today is how can we listen to the voices of the 7 out of 10 children in low and medium income countries that cannot read. Their voices are very, very quiet, and we've got to find a way of amplifying those voices. And an event like this in Doha at WISE is doing that. And I'm delighted with the theme of the WISE conference, unmuting those voices.
Yeah. It's very befitting also with the work that you are doing, because 1billion is an incredible organization. I really love it how you seemingly simplify something as huge as bringing numeracy and literacy to countries where there's practically none, but also being so successful in scaling it all up through the use of software and technology and applying that in the right way. Because it's one thing to talk about that in theory, but also it's another thing to really get it out there and making it successful. And 1billion is clearly an example, a successful example of that. You've managed to really deliver on genuine sustainable learning outcomes for these very quiet voices, as you'd say. So my hat's off to you. I also love the one in everything. So you have 1billion, but I believe you have the one tab, one course. So it's kind of a recurring theme. So it's lovely, and I want to dive into all the great work that you're doing. Most notable, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knows that, is that you won an amazing prize, which is the XPrize in 2019. I read that thousands of children with no formal education were given tablets to test the 5 analyst software solutions that were in the running for the prize. And over a period of 15 months, that was all evaluated and assessed, and you came out as the winner. And then I read, and I hope I read that correctly, $15 million. Wow.
Yes, well, thanks to Elon Musk as
Yeah.
well for putting up the prize money. The, the way it was evaluated was a formal evaluation. So, which group of children from the 5 finalists did the best in terms of learning outcomes? So these were children who are out of school, and mostly because they were too far away from a school to be able to get to school. And there are 500 million children like that around the world who are not in school. So what can we as a community that's passionate about education, what can we do to unlock the talent of those children? So for me, the XPrize showed that in a way, the XPrize is testament to the ingenuity, the creativity of those children. If you can just give that little bit of a catalyst to children, they will fly. And we see children who their innate ability to and their desire to reach their potential is at the heart of teaching. And we see children who are amazing if they're given a chance. So what we believe at 1 billion is that edtech can bring equity to the world. If you can give something to the child that allows them to develop, particularly the gift of reading. Now, you and I, we're lucky enough, by luck, of being born so that someone cared enough about us to teach us to read. Now, if you're never given that chance, life is hard. You can't take control of your own learning. The possible directions you go are narrowed down. So we think that this learning crisis of 7 out of 10 children in low and medium income countries, as defined by the World Bank, not being able to read, what can we in our generation, what can we now do to address this problem, which is really a human right? It's the right of every child to learn to read, and we have to find new ways because the old ways are not working.
Yeah. There's a lot in there what you just said that I would like to unwrap. One of the first things that I thought of is when you say a child, because you're active in so many countries, right? So Tanzania. Sorry, could you help me with the countries your
Yeah,
1 billion is working in?
so we believe in making, at our heart, we're a non-profit publisher. We make software for children to read, and running on a tablet like this one. And we need to work where the child is. So there's maybe no electricity, there's no internet. So we also provide a solar panel.
Wow, yeah.
So that we can work anywhere. We can work in a refugee camp. We can work where there's no internet, where there's no electricity. What we need is the enthusiasm of the child, and that we have. The child will learn if they've given the chance, but we have to work in the child's own language. So we started in Malawi, and that's in Chichewa, the Chichewa language. We now have Swahili for Kenya, for Tanzania. We also have made our software in French for Central and West Africa. And we're just now completing Portuguese for Mozambique. So it's not just a translation. We have to work with the local university, with the experts in the country. So it takes us at the moment about 8 months to make a new language. We've got a long list of ones we would like to do, but we believe that the software has to be relevant to the child. It has to be contextualized. We have to work with the teachers and the experts in each country because they know their children. They know what's best for their children. And we see this as a collaboration between us and experts in the community, and we have passionate people who've worked with us to make the software in these different languages. So we're in Malawi. We just had some research completed in Sierra Leone. We worked in Tanzania, about to start work in Ghana and Uganda. So these are with children who are on the margins. So these are children who are often left behind. We often hear about work being done with secondary school or tertiary education, but we believe that we've got to get a strong foundation, and the strong foundation is reading and numeracy. If we can get those right, the child will take control of their own learning. So this is an absolutely fundamental. It's a must. It's what we've got to. I mean, the World Bank has said literacy and numeracy has to be at the heart.
Yeah. So one of the things, because my questions are a lot around localization. You just mentioned language. You say it takes 8 months to work with a local team on the ground to grow it. Is there anything more needed than just kind of the translation? Because I can imagine it needs to adhere to a certain curriculum. You need to have support of local partners. It needs to be signed off by the government. I mean, it sounds like quite an exercise.
It is quite an exercise. Now, it's important who do we work for at 1 billion? Well, our customer is the child. So the child learning to read. Now, fortunately, the curriculum in every country, you have to learn certain sub skills to learn to read. You need to learn that letters make words, that words, letters make sounds, phonics, and you go on a progression to for reading with comprehension. Now, what is our goal? Our goal is not just that a child can read, but we want a child to read. We want the child to have a love of reading. Now, this is different in different. For example, we start off with introducing letters, but it's different in English to Chichewa. Chichewa, the language in Malawi, is a very syllabic language, so that it's using it's very easy to read. If I showed you a piece of Chichewa, you would be able to read it, and you would be quite accurate reading it because it's so phonetic, but you wouldn't understand it. So reading on its own is not enough. We have to have comprehension, and we have to have reading. The child needs to have a love of reading, so that they can read for enjoyment, they can read for their own learning. And sometimes we sometimes hear discussions that that second best might be good enough for the child. Well, we don't subscribe to that. We think that EdTech, if done really well, can bring equity. One of the exciting things we've had is from a couple of university randomized control trials is that we know that there's a gender bias in all of us, in countries in the UK, in America, in Africa, all over the world, that the boys tend to do better than girls at maths. It's all over the world. But one of the really exciting things we've seen is that if you give boys and girls an identical input to the with carefully designed EdTech software in their own language, the gender differences are removed.
Oh, wow.
And this has been borne out by studies in Malawi and in Sierra Leone. And there is, and we have to sort of accept it, society has different expectations, and there is a bias that society brings into to the way children are taught. If you can remove that bias, then you get this exactly the same the same results for both boys and girls. So we think that EdTech can bring equity, and EdTech can, if you can get it right, it's hard to get it right, but it can scale. If we made a great school somewhere, it's very hard to scale a wonderful school. But if, it's a big if, but if you can get EdTech to deliver these basic skills of reading and numeracy, it is possible to scale. Scale is at the heart of
At the
this
heart of
problem.
things.
Yeah.
And with scale, because from your website I gathered that 167,171 children have benefited from learning through 1 billion, which is a very impressive number. I really like how you've mentioned that on your site, and I think it's the way to go, because you continuously are asked to quantify things and to show kind of what impact is. So metrics are very important. We need to be talking about those metrics. But you just mentioned something around the tension of quality of edtech versus that skill, right? Because giving a device to someone, that's not what you're doing. No, you're giving the device, and you're making sure that a child has a joy for reading further down, so that it's really ingrained within the child, so they can further take that on. How do you deal with the tension between quality on one hand, and then kind of the push for impact on the other, or the push for scale and metrics?
So I think for us, the way I would describe it is don't settle. Don't settle for second best.
Yeah.
The most precious thing is the child's time, and we've got to see the child's time as being invaluable.
Yeah.
What does the child deserve in terms of EdTech? The best or the second best?
Yeah.
We are striving to make our content in Chichewa, in Swahili, working with the government, the best it can possibly be. Now, if there's something better comes along, we have to be prepared to stand back and let something else deliver to the child.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things where we think it goes wrong with so many implementations of education is they're not ambitious enough. We have words like, through our intervention, we will improve teacher training, or
Yeah.
we will improve learning. Now, the word improve is not a strong word. It's a word you can say, oh, I succeeded, with very little results. So
Yeah.
we've got to raise the bar massively higher. We don't say, oh, we want to just improve by 10%, because the standards are so low at the moment in so many countries that we need transformation.
Yeah.
So it's up to all of us not to settle. So
Yeah.
those are the two words I'd say
think
is
that's-
don't settle.
I think that's beautiful, and I 100% agree. But you're giving yourself an enormous challenge there, because which milestones or which targets do you give yourself then, if you say there's practically nothing? And also, you must be dealing with lots of local stakeholders, local partners. I can imagine it's difficult to stay in communication with them and to make sure they think about this in the same way as you do. So how do you do that vetting process exactly? How
Yeah,
does that
so
work?
I mean, I'm glad you noticed we're one course, one tab, one. We have used the word one, and
Yeah.
of course we're called 1 billion because, and that keeps reminding us that our focus is on a child, but also on the 1 billion children that can't read. So
Yeah.
we're focused on that. Now, how do we measure? So many if you work in Africa or in different parts of the world, there is a standard test used called EGRA, which is EGRA. Everyone loves acronyms. Early grade reading assessment. Now, it's a one-to-one test from an assessor to a child, which is expensive and difficult to administer. So we've just brought out what we call one test, which is allows us to measure where the child is on their reading journey, from learning letters to phonic sounds to whole words to sentence recognition, and we're just about to embark on validating it against other tests, and we've had some funding from Cisco Foundation to allow us to do that. Now, this is very important because it keeps us honest. It's no good. Too often, organizations don't really examine the impact they're doing. And we've got to be open that we've got to keep checking ourselves. Are we delivering value
Yeah.
for the child? And
Yeah.
the reason I come back to this, that the child over and over again, is the problem with capitalism is that where there's no market, capitalism or commercial companies or commercial publishers, it does not work. If you're working for the hundreds of millions of children whose family income is $1 a day, there is no commercial model that will sustain that. So
Yeah.
the commercial publishers, they have to make a profit for their shareholders. But if
Yeah.
there's no profit to be made, it then is down to what we would say is the important non-profit sector.
Yeah.
So we're a non-profit publisher. And we don't have financial goals, but we do have goals of making very significant learning outcomes for children.
Yeah.
But we have to measure that. So
Yeah.
it's no good just having that as a goal. You've
Yeah.
got to. We need to be challenged on that.
Yeah.
Is it delivering for the child? So
Yeah.
we have to measure it. So we've now developed a test which we will have validated in 2022, hopefully in the first half, independently. And we will then be able to use that as a metric of where the child is, how they progress on their journey to reading. And the journey is to a love of reading, so that the child can then has the autonomy to take over their own journey. We all, even all of us now, if we want to mend something or do something, we turn to YouTube, we read things on the web. And these children, this is unlocking their own ability to learn.
Yeah.
And if you can't read, it's very difficult journey for a child.
No, I can imagine, and an incredibly difficult journey. So again, my hats off to you for bringing that so close to the child, not only as you say, like a gimmick, because you hear lots of stories about giving a tablet to a child, but then you don't really hear a lot about the follow up and how that leads to sustainable learning outcomes, and what's next, when that is there. So it's really refreshing to hear a story about, we bring the tablet to a child, we understand the local circumstances of the child with with all that your tablet has to offer, but also we follow up and we evaluate, and we really are focused on the child being a client. So I just wanted to reiterate, I think that's a beautiful philosophy and a beautiful vision to build upon. I often interview people about challenges. Now we've already discussed quite a few, but what has been the biggest challenge in building 1 billion?
Okay, so some people won't agree with this, but the big challenge is the power of the status quo. And by that, there is a belief by many people that there is a route to education which we feel comfortable about ourselves. We had perhaps when we're lucky enough to go to a nice primary school, we remember our primary school teacher. We project something onto the solution, which is based on our own experience. Now, it's now time to look at the billions of dollars that have been spent around the world in low and medium income countries, and ask the question, has it worked?
Yeah.
And the answer is, it hasn't worked. We have to do something different. And for me, it's almost stakeholders really accepting this awful truth that 7 out of 10 children aged 10, these are World Bank statistics, are in learning poverty.
Yeah.
Now, this is in spite of billions of dollars being spent. So the starting point has to be, don't carry on in the same direction. We have to make a change.
Yeah.
Now, this change has to put the child at the center. Now, this is an uncomfortable truth for many stakeholders who say, well, we've always done it a certain way, and if we did it just a bit better, or perhaps we spent a bit more money on teacher training, or we built a few more classrooms. But the trouble is that's been done over and over again, and the results are not good enough. So the voice of the child is saying, teach me to read. I must learn to read. And we have to accept that the status quo is not acceptable.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest challenge, is to say, what can we do differently now? And we feel that that many organizations see that they're very happy for their own children to have access to new technology, but they somehow, for some reason, they feel that that's not acceptable for the most marginalized children. But actually, we want the best for the child, not second best.
Yeah.
So I think this is at the heart of where we as 1 billion are going. We want to see the child at the center,
Yeah.
and we want all of us to, including ourselves, to come with great humility that the existing solutions are not delivering, and we need to think differently.
Need to think differently. So in growing 1 billion, were you at a point where, as you said before, like, okay, we're doing it wrong? Did you ever come to such an internal conclusion, and that you say, guys, we need to revisit this, throw away what we've had and start again? Has that been the
Yes,
case?
I think one of our strengths at 1 billion is we're prepared to rapidly change direction.
Okay.
So we started off, we did our first experiments more than 20 years ago, before tablets existed, and we used interactive portable DVD players where you interacted with the 5 buttons. And we learned something very rapidly, that children were engaged, children were motivated, children would learn. The technology did not deliver. The batteries ran out too quickly. The disk didn't like the heat or the dust. But we learned from that experience. So we've got to we have to be prepared to test things and not change direction.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fundamental. Now, EdTech has had a bad press because we've seen massive experiments which have failed almost completely.
Yeah.
And we have to be honest about failure, and we have to be honest about our own failure. I mean, we're great believers in research. If you don't research something independently, it's all guesswork.
Yeah.
So we're very cautious of anyone that researches themselves, including us. So with our new assessment, we want the truth. We will have it independently. We'll be choosing a university to research it, and we will be telling them we want the truth. If it doesn't deliver, we're the first that want to know. Now, this is not a feature of many organizations, including, pharmaceutical companies. They want the evidence for their drug or whatever it is. We want to know if it doesn't deliver. We want to know if it's second best. So the child is the customer. The child, we have to find ways of that child being excited and curious. The child is the child wants to learn. And this statistic of, after 8 years at primary school, 7 out of 10 children cannot read. We have to bring dramatic change now, and it's up to all of us to use research to find out what works, and to be prepared to stop or change direction. And we need to do it rapidly, because before another generation of children miss out on being able to read.
Going back to this number, 7 out of 10, we of course live in very strange times with the pandemic. Do you think this number has worsened?
Well, yes. The number before the pandemic, if we the World Bank statistics on low-income countries was 89% of children in countries as defined by the World Bank as low income. 89% of 10-year-olds were in learning poverty. Now, if you combined low income and medium income, it used to be 53% were in learning poverty. But since the pandemic, the World Bank has just produced new statistics where that number has gone up by 17%. Now, if you think what that means, most countries in the world are low or medium income.
Yeah.
So this is a crisis for the world of
Yeah.
that resource of its children who are
Yeah.
not being and not learning to read. So we have to imagine a future
Yeah.
where this most important resource of, I mean, what is a country's most precious resource? It's not its oil, it's not its gold or its diamonds. The most important value, the most precious thing it has is its children.
Yeah.
And we need to find ways of these children learning to read.
Yeah. I'm getting signals here that we're almost at the end, but we could talk for hours,
Yes,
Andrew.
we could
I
indeed.
have so
Yeah,
many more
yeah,
questions to ask you.
yeah.
I'm gonna wrap up with what is next for 1 billion. What are we going to talk about at WISE 2023? I believe it's every 2 years. So
Well,
what do,
okay, very quickly, I'll answer that. What is our goal? It's to work with others in collaboration, to work, and the goal is in our name, 1 billion children. Now, that's not us doing it. So we encourage partnerships, working so we can help and we can work with other organizations to reach this goal of 1 billion children.
yeah. I wish you all the best in doing that. My hat's off to you. Well deserved this XPrize, and I hope 1 billion successes for you, Andrew Ashe. Thank you so very much for your time, and I wish you a wonderful WISE Summit further down. And let's talk some more, but offline. So tune in to the WISE channel. We're here throughout the entire event for more WISE on Air. Conversations hosted by myself, Aldo the Pap. And tomorrow there will be a discussion in Arabic led by language teacher, author, and entrepreneur Maha Yacoub, also known as Learn Arabic with Maha on YouTube, and many more great things to come with a great team, Carly here, Nandita, and myself. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Aldo.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
You're welcome.